Welcome back to the history of English literature. We are looking at the origin of drama. So, in the last videos, we have took a look upon the predecessors of drama, that is a proper drama. We have seen mystery plays, miracle plays, morality plays, the interludes. So we know that the dramas, the plays were took a rebirth in church only. The first kind of called is mystery plays, which means secret or religious truth. It's fully based on the stories and scenes from the Bible. The next kind of plays called miracle plays. It's all about the lives and biographies of saints. Okay, there is a shift from the church actors to the common people, that is statesmen. So the miracle plays evolved during the 13th century in England. Next, at the end of the 14th century, there was the origination of the new kind of plays called morality plays. It's all based on the moral behavior, about the moral behavior. There was a characters, abstract characters. The best example of this morality play is the Everyman. It was published in 1490. There was a treatment of virtues as the characters. As well as in the middle of the 15th century, the theatres were built outside of the city. The church outlaws the performance of the theatre. So next, the middle of the 16th century, there arises a new kind called interludes. It is a short play with real characters. So the characters are no more abstract, but the real individuals. There is absence of allegorical figures. There is a shift from morality to comedy. So in this video, we are going to look at the 16th century English drama. So with these sort of settings, we find England, that is English drama, achieving a foundational stage from 16th century onwards. And in the 16th century, especially from 1550s onwards, we find a renewed interest in pagan antiquity. If you remember at the beginning and before videos, we have noted that the miracle plays and the morality plays had very little to do with the ancient classical traditions. They had moved away from the Roman and the Greek plays, and they had their own standards, their own kinds of stages, so on and so forth. By middle of the 1550s, there is a revival in pagan antiquity, and this is also the time when Renaissance is running high in Europe and also in England. So because of these reasons, the comedy of Plautus and Terence, the tragedies of Seneca, all of these have a huge influence in shaping English drama from the 16th century. At the same time, very important to note that they also had a lot of native elements, in the sense Elizabethan stage becomes a very native kind of thing, a native structure which the playwrights within Britain had begun within England, had begun to conceive and begun to popularize. So from the 16th century onwards, through the age of Shakespeare, through the age of Elizabeth, we see that there are these classical influences coming in, but also a native tradition begins to be forged. So we will also see in detail in the next videos about the dramas in the period of Elizabeth, that is Elizabethan drama, how English drama was different from the classical dramas of the ancient times, and there are lots of Latin imitations which were getting enacted in the university of that period. As well as we have to note down that the university centers like such as Oxford and Cambridge had now become the centers of intellectual excellence, and many of these universities began to encourage the staging of plays in Latin by imitating from the earlier stalwarts from Greek and Latin, and this is the time when English comedy begins to emerge in its full being. Nicholas Udall who was also the headmaster of Eton, one of the most famous ancient public schools in Britain. His comedy Rolf Roaster Doyster was published in stage, then published in 1551. This was considered as the first real English comedy from 16th century, and this continues. There are a lot of disputes about whether this qualifies itself as the first comedy or not, but in literary history it continues to hold the distinction of being the first real English comedy. There was also another comic play which was hugely popular during those times. It's called Gammer Gutten's Needle. That is the Needle. It's written by Gammer Gutten in which was published in 1575. Apart from the humor that it had, this play, this play was also important for the later periods, for the later historians, and for the critics because it showed glimpses of the English life of English 16th century. So the English life has shown through this play clearly, vividly. And the tragedy was also quite significant and important during this time. We also find different genres getting formed in terms of their keeping in tune with dramatic traditions. Thomas Rockwell and Norton together had produced this tragedy called Gorboduc in the year 1562. This was also in a blank verse, which had a continuing impact on the way the English drama was getting framed. And at this point, it is important to note that the classical antiquities had excelled itself in the presentation of the tragedies, and when Sackwell and Norton had their first tragedy, Gorboduc, this had classical elements in it, but they had also broken away significantly from the classical theme. So, there was a lot of ways in which the English drama was trying to project itself as distinct, as more native and freer from foreign influences, but at the same time, a survival imitation of classical models continued to exist at least for a while because there were a lot of poor imitations of works from Greek and Roman history. There were also people who had merely translated the works from the classical antiquities and tried to pass it on as an original work. Then there were also historical plays which began to dominate this time. There were in fact more dramatized form of yearly chronicles. They featured the lives of kings, the lives of great warriors, the lives of knights, so on and so forth. And these kind of plays, in fact, combined comic and tragic elements. Some of these we would be seeing in the next upcoming videos. About the combination of tragedy and comedy was very important because in classical sense, a play could either be entirely tragic or it could be entirely based on comedy. But it is a new genre arised. But the history plays gave a new form where the English dramatist and English playwrights could experiment by bringing in the elements of comedy and tragedy within a single play. With this, there begins the foundation for the Elizabethan drama. The stage is being set for great stalwarts like Shakespeare and others to emerge from the Elizabethan period onwards. So, in the upcoming videos, we will take a look at how these foundational elements were very significant in shaping the kind of drama that Elizabethan England began to witness. This influence was exemplified not just in this structure and the theme of the drama, but also in the way the idea of the theatre began to be conceived and the way the theatre begins to be commercialized, so on and so forth. Now let us look at the some questions from the 16th century drama. So the first question is, which is the first English comedy? The option is Twelfth Night, A Tale of Two Cities, Rolf Royster Doyster, Needle. So undoubtedly option C is the correct one, Rolf Royster Doyster. Moving on to the next question. Who wrote the comic play called Needle? The comic play called Needle was written by Gammer Gurton. If we move on to the next, which is the first English tragedy? Twelfth Night, A Tale of Two Cities, Gorboduc, or Hamlet. Gorboduc is the first English tragedy.